We call this place REMIX because that's exactly what I used to do in the clubs with music. I would take an original version of a song, I would put a new beat, a new rhythm, new lyrics, and create a completely different version of that song. I'm Jimmie Neilsen. I'm CEO and founder of REMIX Coffee Bar and Social Club located in historic downtown Claremont, New Hampshire. To give you a little bit of the backstory of why we're doing REMIX and the whole history behind here, because it is a cool place, people love hanging out here, but it's important that people understand where this came from. It wasn't like I just woke up one day and said, hey, I think I'll open a coffee bar. I used to be a club DJ down in Boston during college. Something had to pay the bills, something had to pay for the textbooks, and so I became a club DJ, and I was working in clubs and bars and that whole life that came with that as a DJ. That was one of my ways to socialize and get to know who people were, and along with that whole environment came the alcohol and the girls and just the whole lifestyle that the club life was. I was in that environment every Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. I started making compromises in that environment, and I went a whole nother direction with my life that I never thought was possible due to the way I was raised. Having been raised in the church and having faith, for me, faith wasn't, at that point, wasn't personal. It was something that was very distant. I knew what I believed, but I wasn't necessarily living in that manner. There was a particular Friday night that my brother asked me to go out. We were living in Old Orchard Beach. We had a beachfront condo there that we were renting. And in the past 6 or 7 years, every other night I would have gone out with him. But for whatever reason, I don't know why to this day, I said no. And he kind of took a pause and looked at me funny and probably was thinking, are you feeling all right? Because we always go out together and this was just our thing. And I said no. And in the moment, had no idea why, nor did I know what I was going to end up doing that night. But he's out in the clubs, and I ended up on my bedroom floor, a mess that night. Just really praying, questioning a lot of things about just where my life was at. How did I get to this point? After 6 years, how did I get here? In that moment, that night, there was like this rededication, a recommitment to pursue those things of value and of purpose, the way I was raised, and remind myself that that God does have a future for me, and He does have plans and purposes for me, and that they're out there, they're for me, and I got to find what that is. And it's probably not in a bar or club. I kind of laugh because here we are in a bar and club. At a conference out in Hawaii for the Foursquare church denomination. A lot of great speakers and whatnot there, and I was really being encouraged. This was May of 2016. I was sitting outside journaling one morning, and I was sitting next to a little boutique, and I kind of was looking around, and up on the wall it said REMIX, and that was the name of this boutique. And my journal entry that morning was all about 2 Corinthians 5:17, about being a new creation in Christ. And that word REMIX, seeing it on the wall, I said, it brought me back to those days of being a DJ, and that's exactly what I used to do with music. And I said, in that moment, and I wrote it down, Christ remixed my life. He took an old version, he took the old man, and he made a new man. He made a new version. And it's only through Jesus Christ that is even possible. And it started this whole thought process of people that claim to know Christ, their life has been remixed. We say, live that remixed life here at REMIX. And REMIX stands for, a remixed life is renewed, enriched, missional, inclusive, and extreme. It's our core values. And that first R, the letter R, stands for renewed. It's that I'm a new creation in Christ. And so when I got back from Hawaii, the wheels are turning a mile a minute. I'm like, wow, we got to do something with this thought, because this is not just that was a great thought. This was a God moment. And we said, we need to create a space for young adults that is kind of your alternative to your typical bar and club. I had lived that environment, been there, And we always were getting asked, like, where do you go to hang out and meet people that's not a bar, like a traditional bar or club scene? We said, well, it'd be cool to kind of create a space that's the alternative to that. We'd be open at nighttime. We'd have thumping music, have lights, so it had the look and feel of a nightclub. My brother, who's kind of co-founder of REMIX with me, he's a coffee connoisseur. He loves his coffee. He said, well, why not try like a coffee bar thing? I was like, that might work, because coffee, who doesn't like coffee? But what we didn't know is if coffee at nighttime would work. We started looking around in Claremont for a brick and mortar storefront location. Every spot we looked at, we were turned down. I was actually having prayer with a gentleman one morning, and he looked up from his storefront and he pointed at a space. He said, that's where you're gonna be. And it was a space we hadn't even looked at yet. And the address is 1 Pleasant Street. It doesn't get more downtown than the number 1, and it's right in a big rotary in downtown Claremont. So we reached out to the landlord, and he just blew our socks away. He worked us a good deal. But now the renovations needed to start. So we needed to transform this place into what was going to be REMIX. None of us have construction backgrounds. It was just going to be volunteers. We don't have any money to our name. But if I've learned anything in this whole REMIX journey, it's obedience precedes the provision and the miraculous. We signed the lease contract because we knew that this was where we were supposed to be without a dime to our name. Our first month's rent came due. I looked to my wife, I said, you and I are on the hook for this if no money comes in. And we had applied for a number of grants and we're seeking some support. But I remember another particular day where the rent was due that first month. My wife and I pulled up in front of our REMIX location, and it was pouring rain, and I said, there better be a check in this mailbox. And I said it in faith because rent was due. And I went up to that mailbox and I pulled out an envelope. It was from one of the foundations that we were seeking funding from. And I sat in that car, I opened that envelope, and I said to myself, this is probably another rejection notice, because we had received multiple up to that point. And it was our first $10,000 check to launch REMIX. My wife and I get choked up sharing about it right now, because that was the confirmation to continue on despite the opposition that we had hit at that point. And there was no turning back. We fast forward, we all volunteered, we had people chip in, we renovated the spot. The spot that we're in was a former bridal gown rental shop. So there was a lot of renovation to make it into a bar, nightclub kind of environment. A lot of volunteers. We raised, in time, material, and cash donations when the project was all said and done, about 7 months, just under $100,000. And if someone had told me it was going to take that amount of money and time to do this at the beginning, I never would have started. I wouldn't have started at all. And this is why God's sovereign and we're not. He knew exactly what the end product, if you will, was going to look like. He knew what it was going to be, how it was going to turn out. And there's a reason why we don't see that and we don't know certain things. So in May 2017, we opened our doors. We had our launch party, if you will. We packed out with just over 100 people in here. We have city councilors, town officials, the mayor, chief of police. We have a lot of representatives from the community in here. And I can tell you, 2.5 years later, that support continues and remains very strong. We've got great favor in our community. So our business model at REMIX is 100% donation-based, pay it forward, because we said if we're going to serve a certain population, a certain community of people that are low income, struggling with addiction, whatever it may be, they may not be able to afford a $4 or $5 coffee, and we don't want that to be the reason that they don't come and hang out with us on a Friday night. So we said it's got to be a donation business model. And I'm happy to say, to this day, when we say the suggested donation is $250 or $350, certainly there are people that come in and they've got no money to their name, and you know what? We give away a lot of free coffee, a lot of hot chocolate, and we love doing that. That's why we're here. We're here to bless the community. But at the same time, we have people that come in, and instead of $250, they give us $5, they give us $10, they give us $20, and they say, keep the change. And in turn, they've just covered 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 coffees. So the money that does come in, we don't keep any of it. So we're all volunteers, so there's no one on payroll here. We have multiple donors who support us on a monthly basis to help keep our overhead costs low, but we pay 100% of our donations, our profits, back to our community, 100%. So we actually here in REMIX have a donation wall where we memorialize all of the organizations and families that we've been able to bless, and to date we are just under $12,000. You may say, well, that's a good amount, but it's not huge. Do the math. When you're open for 3 hours a week, over the course of 2 years, that's about 300 hours of operation. Your typical business week is 40 hours. That's, 8 weeks of business? So in 8 weeks of business, we've donated $12,000 back to our community. Anything we can do to bless our community, to help our community, that is what REMIX is all about. Because, as we say here, you are not alone.